Hey everyone, Walter Crosby with Helix Sales Development, your host of Sales and Cigars. So today's guest is Jason Marc Campbell. He has written a book called Selling with Love. He has his own podcast that we're going to talk about in our podcast. We talk a little bit about the need to write this book, why it's kind of sad that we have to write a book like this. Um, Mark's got some great ideas around why people get into sales and how their energy and how they approach their job is important. So bringing fear to a sales call, to a sales meeting, that just starts off with the wrong energy. So he's got a cool perspective. Opens up to some different ideas. We get to a big idea around how the selling role and the buying role can really change and affect a community, and that we both parties have responsibility. So great episode, a lot of fun. Go grab a cocktail, grab a cigar, and strap in for another episode of Sales and Cigars. Thanks. So Jason, thanks for taking some time out of your evening as you're in across the planet from us here in the States. You're in Bali, correct?
That's right. So for me, it ends up being late evening, but being here and doing so much business with Americans, I traded my life. I said the 9 to 5, that's over. We don't need this. So now instead I do a 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. and then I get a gap in between. But that's one way of designing on your habits. So I'm okay with that.
But you're in Bali and you have a variety of other opportunities. I'm sure lifestyle is it's got to be wonderful. So congratulations for being able to make that happen. So um, what I'd love to do is like open up, start talking a little bit about the book, Selling with Love, and it gets into talking about integrity and things, and I think my point of view when I read the title and did a little research in it is it's kind of sad that we need to write that book, and it's just the state of our culture or where we are. And I kind of like to talk through that and what your reasons were. But am I are we in agreement there? Is that part of the reason why you sat down and put that book together?
I mean, I'd say for most people who do something that stands boldly for a message, usually comes with a story of some sort of problem they've seen or a suffering they've went through. And so for a book like Selling with Love to be birthed comes from the fact that we almost live in a society that is very hard to trust each other. We're almost always on
Mm,
guard with everything that's happening. Anybody, a stranger, don't talk to strangers. And if we get in particularly the world of sales, there's a couple things that happen. Number one is we have this kind of guard up for any kind of human connection. If somebody has something to offer, it's like, no, I don't want to hear it. I want to keep it away. And that's unfortunate, especially if you're somebody going out in sales with an integrity and a good heart and wanting to do good. You're going forward with your clients in mind. You're trying to solve their problems. So everybody's got their heart, their guard up. So it just becomes this negative attitude we have around sales. But that didn't just happen naturally. We have the expression that, it takes a few bad apples to ruin the pot. And I'd say in
mm,
the field of sales, it wasn't a few bad apples. There was a lot of bad apples. And unfortunately, we're in a field that's actually very loosely regulated. There's not a professional certification you need to get to become a
nope.
salesperson. Anybody can put on a jacket, make some calls, or show up and make appointments. And so a very low filter for anybody to get into the field. And what that's left is a lot of average players, maybe not following the things in the right way, coming from a fearful energy. And as such, it
Mm,
created this doubtful experience. It created this ecosystem where we doubt, we don't trust. And let's be honest, I'll use the technical term here, Walter, which is there's a lot of douchebag marketers and salespeople in the ecosystem. And that would be your really rotten apples. And the story for me is I got taken on a nice little seminar adventure in my early 20s about real estate and promised to make the millions, told that everything I was going to do would be funded, and I was given the right information. And I used that with air
hmm
quotes. And, they put me in a room, recorded a testimonial, and lo and behold, everything I was taught was wrong. The promises that were made were not upheld. And I was left caught with my pants down. And I'm like, how could they do this? And so through that experience, I'm like, I want to see sales be beautiful again. I want to see the ethical businesses understand how powerful and beautiful sales is. And the way I define it in the book is it's an energy exchange between conscious beings. And the concept of love comes from understanding that what you offer is so much more than what you ask in return. Love is what balances
Mm.
the equation. And that's the energy I want to bring back into the field. This is what I want to encourage people to step up to. And I know there's some great players that are already operating this way. I'm trying to shake the world to realize that that's the way we should all be playing.
You're talking about value, integrity, giving people more than what they're expecting. And I look at sales as helping people, right? And I'm not tied to a transaction. It's like, can I help them? Can I help them with a problem? If I can't, can I get them in front of somebody who can? And the real numbers, like when you talk about salespeople like bad apples, and they're probably not bad human beings, they're but in the role of a salesperson, it's 49% of the salespeople out there, based on the research that we've done with Objective Management Group. 49% of salespeople are just awful. They fit your technical definition of douchebag in terms of their approach, right? I mean, it's sad but true that if you approach it where I gotta make this sale, you put pressure on yourself, and then that pressure, that energy, is felt by your prospect, and that's where the positive and negative is repels each other. um, it's a you're 100% on. And it's sad that you had that experience early in life, with a seminar where you were, um, taken advantage of, if for lack of a better term. But you turned it around into a positive, right? Like, how do we avoid this from happening to other people? How do we help change a few people's hearts and minds? Is that fair?
Well, I mean,
Like,
that's exactly why I put the book together. I've learned through the tough pill to swallow. And although I have no regrets for the experience, and I send blessings to those people that make me go through this. And, I even talk in my book how to me, I get to choose the story I tell myself on what happened where I got taken advantage of. But instead, I'm like, you know what? Maybe these people thought I had it in me. Maybe they wanted to throw me so deep in the water that they know I'd start swimming. And then I learned so much during that experience. So there was a positive side. Now, I don't think you need to go through that kind of experience to learn things. And from what I've went through, I'm hoping that I can distill the ideas that not only for a salesperson, small business owner, to realize that you can go out there and you can sell ethically where it's going to work, it's going to make an impact, it's going to feel good. So you don't need to feel insecure when you sell. Because as you said, for a lot of these people that are selling and it's not coming from a great energy, oftentimes is because got to pay the mortgage. You haven't had the training or the support. You're feeling insecure. You get the sales culture within a company that encourages certain behaviors. All these mechanisms are at play that are beyond the self. And so, one of the byproducts in writing my book, and I write this towards the end, is as much as I want to help the salespeople to actually learn how to sell with love, but I also want to raise the bar and encourage people to buy being more conscious. The more conscious we are
hmm.
as buyers, the more we get to ask powerful questions and be educated as buyers to understand how do we understand what are the motivations for the seller, what are the intentions, what's the impact they want to make for me, how much do they understand me, how amazing is this product, what work have they done to ensure that it's the best. And we can ask them more difficult questions because as buyers we set what we tolerate in the marketplace. So my byproduct is don't just sell with love, but learn to buy with love, because everywhere we spend our dollars is an indication to the market of what's important to us.
Well, you're actually driving the market with as a buyer, as to how you approach it. And some buyers, like, we can talk about buyers from a procurement point of view, where they're looking at absolute lowest cost, nothing else matter. We'll beat you up later on quality. And that's exactly what you're talking about. I think where that that flips it. And I live in a town that's referred to as the Motor City, and the auto industry is having its troubles and challenges once again. And that their buying habits of the large automotive companies, that gets pushed down to all of the suppliers. So when they look at price, when their suppliers actually can add value, and like I'm not talking 30 points. I'm talking like, a nickel here, a dime there, where there's a better engineered product. If the buyers could just listen and understand that this will save recalls, or this will save, quality problems, it will ultimately improve your brand. So I had never really thought of that before, but it's a really great point that if both parties come to the table looking to create wins, not just for themselves at the table, but for their customers down the road, the community down the road. That really has legs. It has lasting effect to push that all the way through. That's another great point. I hadn't really thought about the the buyers have a responsibility in that equation as well.
Yeah, it's funny you bring up procurement because I don't talk too much about this, but in my early, or I would say my early career slash late education, I actually had a chance to do internships in procurement departments within a government, and I thought that was a
Mm,
very interesting ecosystem where you have so many conflicting forces that are at play for your procurement strategy. To be able to be a buyer, it's like, okay, you'd have international agreements, regional agreements, some First Nations agreements. There was so many different type of like protocols and ways to make things more fair, but it actually made the whole process very complex. And you'd come to that point where it's always, oh, do we just look at the best price? And what I found was really interesting when it comes from a government perspective is if you're working in procurement, you're always going out to compete every bid, versus when you're in a private organization, there's actually more incentive to building long-term relationships and capacity to deliver the consistent product and build that reputation and continually working with the same supplier, which is a luxury that as a government usually don't have because they always have to go back and compete. And if someone on the selling side decides to operate less ethically, cut the price a bit, and like you said, we'll cut the price, we'll deliver now, and if there's problems, we'll just make the promises now and we'll deal with the problems later to win the contract, that ends up being really difficult for people to be able to continue with these transactions, feel good about it. But at the same time, as we go and buy, we're the ones demanding that pressure. We're the ones going on Amazon and trying to see that one product, even on an individual level. We are showing
mm.
the market that we don't care. We're going to buy that cheapest TV. We don't care about the features. So, guess what the market's receiving? All right, they just want the cheapest. So, let's not make it last too long. Oh, let's make that iPhone be done with a battery after 2 years. And we keep buying. So, our behaviors are reinforcing the habits. So, there is a responsibility, there is a consciousness and an awareness we have to have as buyers, because sellers at the end of the day will respond to the market. But at the same time, if I can make a bit of education happen on both sides, we can all lift the tide together.
That's a great point. The all of those pieces fit together. Where both sides of the equation are driving market on each side, um, and that's why you have brand segmentation, right? Where certain brands are based on price. Like if you just think about Walmart, right? You're going to Walmart because it's the lowest price and the quality is maybe sketchy, but you're going to get something for less dollars. And then you have, brands that represent, not necessarily luxury but value. Um, that there's an attachment to those brands, and those people that buy those brands have a certain worldview that this is not just status but safety, or an ability to um, get greater value, that something's going to last a little longer. I mean, I have a television in my house that's 20 years old. um, I know that sounds kind of sad in this day and age, but it's 20 years old and it's still it still works. It's got a pretty good picture. Yeah, there's some televisions out there in other rooms of the house that have greater, better pictures, but it that doesn't happen anymore, right? There's this planned obsolescence for manufacturing that it will die at a certain point and has to be replaced, and that's perfectly acceptable.
Yeah.
Um, so your book and your theory and your ideas all kind of really come together to make us think about sales and the buying equation. Um, I think quite differently. I think it's a I have to. I'm going to go on Amazon and order it.
Well, at the same
To,
time, I want to go back to one thing you said, which is the Walmart example, right? And what
Hmm.
happens is if you're selling with love, there's one of the loves you have is for the client that you serve, and you have an understanding of what they're looking for. And if I look at a company like Walmart or Amazon, which are one of those super giants, and it's so easy to pick on them, right? But they
Hmm.
understood what their value proposition was. For Walmart, they're like, their mission is that we're going to make the most affordable purchases at the lowest price possible so that the most amount of people can make their dollar stretch further. Like there's a
Sure.
segment that they are serving like no other person, which is we're going to allow everybody's money to stretch further to get more for the lowest price. And that's what they guarantee. That's what they bring. So I think there's a lot of love to see in the way Walmart operates because they were like, I remember Sam Walton days reading his biography, and it's like they were vigilant on finding the cheapest suppliers to be able to get the lowest price for their customers and then creating campaigns and promotions to move the most amount of product because not only is the end client the customer, but their suppliers as well. They have relationships that are managed across the board, which opens up what the concept of selling is. And in my book, one of the things I reinforce is for anybody who's listening to this and they're not a labeled salesperson, everybody's in sales. If you're in HR, you're in sales for recruitment. If you're an
Mm.
executive, you're in sales to get your teams to align to the goals and to bring results, and you got to motivate people. And the way I define it in my book is you're just doing an energy exchange for whatever purpose you're trying to bring, which is value at the end of the day. So we're
Mm.
always selling in the business world, regardless of the position, but even in our personal lives. And as such, I find it a shame that so many people have a sales reluctance, have sales hesitancy, because now you're missing out on just being able to go about, do your business in the best ways and not compromise because you're limited by, call it a language barrier, which is just a way of being able to communicate so that everyone understands that you're out here delivering value.
Well said. Yeah, I wasn't taking a shot at Walmart because they are delivering on their promise, which is perfect. But the idea that the idea that this exchange of energy is, value, however you want to position it, it is it's bigger than what I think what people realize, that you really need to think about how your emotions play in sales, and how, and what you're trying to deliver. And if everybody was a little bit, skepticism is important. We should be a little skeptical from time to time. But if you enter the relationship, or you enter the engagement with, an open mind, you can be wary. But if you enter an open mind, like, we're gonna try to make this work, that just makes that flow a lot easier. But if you enter it with fear or some sort of manipulation in mind, we start off on, not on the wrong foot. We just start off from the whole wrong angle. So I think your book uh, is helping solve a problem that most people don't realize. I mean, sure, everybody has feelings about salespeople, but it's much bigger than that. And your book kind of speaks to that, and hopefully opens up some eyes. I love it. Um, so there's one other thing I wanted to kind of talk about here, Jason, is you have a podcast, and I'm going to put this in the show notes if it's okay. But here's $100,000 solved for your business, and the title intrigues me. Um, so can you kind of share a little bit about what that episode was, and we'll make it available for easy for people to go grab it and download.
Well, as you go into the show notes, you'll go deeper into the episode. So I'm glad you're sharing that. In essence, what I was doing is because my audience happens to be small business owners in most of the cases, and I've seen so many of them wondering that there's so many limitations why they're not growing, why their business isn't actually being successful. One of them often is, well, I'm just not good at this sales thing. And the other one is that, oh, well, I don't have any money to invest into what I want to be done so that I can be at the level that I see myself and I think people should be able to see me as. And so in this episode, I play an example of what would it look like if you were out there to raise $100,000 of investment in your business at the moment that it is now. Would people be comfortable giving you that money? What would be the kinds of questions they would ask? Where would you be spending that money? Do you have a plan? And it becomes very
Mm.
interesting when you look at that perspective because now you're actually making plans for where you want to go. And I feel for so many people, if you're stuck at the level of income that you're now and you're looking at these limitations and you're operating from this reality, how do you expect to be drawn towards the next level you want to get if you're not even prepared to handle that amount of money or wealth that comes your way? If I go into my more spiritual side and woo woo side, they say the universe is generous to those who are well prepared. And so through that episode, I kind of create a wake up call and I say, assume you're going out to raise 100,000 for your business. What would that business plan look like? Where would you be spending it? What would you be investing in? What do you think are the limitations? Is it a web presence? Would you build that? Would you invest in that? Is it advertising? Would you spend in advertising? Send them towards what? Are you trying to get product validation? What kind of research would you be able to put in place? And when you start playing with a budget, you get to be more creative. And now you can just start to prioritize, well, with the money available or with the ways that I'm going to operate my business, I know these are the steps I need to take. Some of these I might actually exchange time instead of money if I'm not in a position to attract that capital. Or just maybe you'll realize that it's more important than ever to raise that capital so you can go to market and build things the right way.
Mm. So you're the my takeaway from your explanation is you're freeing up the small business owner's mind to think about they have the access to the 100,000. What would they do with it? So you're helping them change their mindset of one of like, I can't, this won't work. It's a challenge. I don't have it, to my limitations, right? To like, what if we did? How would that work? Which is a coaching technique. I know you can't do that. I know it's hard, but what if you could? What would happen, right? And that's sort of what you're allowing them to do. Very generous, getting them to see that there is something is possible. It maybe not all of it, but they make progress, and to me, that's what's essential. Is making progress as an entrepreneur, as a small business owner. You a little bit of progress every day, every week is going to get you to where you want to go. The idea of an overnight success, to me, is like an iceberg. Um, you see the top part of it, but most of the iceberg is under the water. And that's all of the hard work and the passion and the discipline and the structure that gets there. So you're really you're helping them free their mind with this episode. So that makes it, I think, more important to for people to listen to this. If you're running a small business or running a team in a division of a larger company, same principles apply, right? What can we do better? I love it. It's great. It's awesome. Um, so I'll have that in there. How I'd like to land this, Jason, is if there's we always ask if there's a relationship with a guest, if they have a relationship with cigars. And so my question is there a relationship with cigars?
You gave me a heads up on this, so I had a chance to think. So, cigars is not something I actively smoke, but I've had a few in
Mm-hmm.
my growing up age. I've had some beautiful moments connecting with individuals at conferences, and I remember I had a friend who would always bring me a cigar, and we'd be able to have a great conversation in the process. But I think what I like to give as an example, because I speak about the tobacco industry within my book, and one of the key things I tell salespeople they should be really clear on when they go and sell is what's the impact of the sales that you make. So fall in love with that impact. And I speak about the fact that I almost got recruited to go into sales for a company that was selling those e-cigarettes. And I thought that was very interesting. But as someone who's not a smoker or wants to be a smoker, to go into an industry where I would perceive it as, oh my God, I'm going to go encourage more people to pick up an addictive habit, that doesn't align with my values and my impact. So that didn't seem to appeal to me. But then I put myself in the shoes of someone else. And let's say you've been a smoker for your entire life and you're trying to find a habit that is going to be more healthy, that's going to actually be less harmful, and maybe actually ditch the habit in the process. Perhaps you have faith in these e cigarettes, and perhaps you taking that position is serving the impact you want to make, which is actually help people get off the cigarettes and more into the e cigarettes. And so I say that story because it's not black and white that these industries are good and these industries are bad. It's just being clear with yourself on what is it that you're interested in? What do you feel are the impacts you want to see in the world? And go and sell that with enthusiasm, which means if you're a connoisseur of cigars, you love how it supports the tobacco farmers, how there's a craft that goes into creating all of these amazing cigars. And this is something that you want to see beautifully evolve because some of the best memories are created around a cigar. Then go and be in a position where you get to sell this powerfully with impact and excitement and enthusiasm. Because they often say,
Hmm.
if you're going to be a salesperson, you need to know how to transfer enthusiasm. Nothing's more enthusiastic than somebody who's selling something they're passionate about. And if you're clear on the impact, that comes naturally.
Passion is critical for, what you're doing, right? And even if you're selling this inane, like I have a client who sells a preservation product for asphalt, right? And it's a they're doing some good things for the environment, to prolong and extend life of product, but it's not a real sexy product, right? But the salespeople that are successful are passionate about the product, in that they're adding value to communities, they're saving time, money, right? All of these things. So if you don't have passion, and you can align that with great impact, I mean, nothing nothing can stop you in sales if you bring those things and you add some skills and you're constantly looking to get better. It's a great story. I appreciate that. You promised you wouldn't make anybody cry with that story, so that's you
Have to
lived your
deliver on my promise here, Wilter.
this. So thanks again. I will have the podcast episode in the show notes so people can go find that real quick. Is there anything else that somebody wants to reach out to you? Your website is pretty easy to remember, right? You want to share that?
Yeah.
LinkedIn. What's the best way to reach you?
You can find my website. It's my name, Jason Marc Campbell, but also LinkedIn is a powerful place for salespeople. So come and connect with me. Always add a note when you do connect and tell me that you've just listened to me on the Sales and Cigars podcast. So that way I'll know where did we connect from. And if there's a part that you thought was particularly interesting and relevant for you, do let me know, as I always like to connect and get feedback.
Awesome, Jason. Thanks again. Go enjoy the rest of your evening in Bali. Take care.
Thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for having me. It was a pleasure.